Hello everyone, Neil Patel here. Thank you for downloading the latest episode of the Indian Startup Show. So today I chat to Shruti Gandhi. She's the managing partner at Array Ventures. Array Ventures is a venture capital firm based in the US which focuses on solving impactful problems using revolutionary technology. Sounds really cool. So in this episode, we talk about her operational and investment experience, her life in Silicon Valley, what she looks for when investing in startups, and what first-time founders should be focusing on. We also talk about machine learning as well. So please enjoy the show. Thank you. Hello, Shruti. Thanks for coming on the Indian Startup Show today.
Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do, please.
I run an investment fund, Array Ventures, mostly invest in enterprise, deep tech, which consists of AI, machine learning, analytics, data-driven companies.
Okay, cool.
And I've been doing this I've been investing for over 5 years, and I started my fund about a year ago.
And can you share some stats? I mean, how many companies have you invested in, and how's it going so far?
Yeah, I've invested in 12 companies in the last year, and the companies have been doing pretty awesome. 3 of them have raised follow-on funding. And most of the companies are in the enterprise space, as I said. So they are getting some really good traction, revenues, numbers, all doing really awesome, actually.
So let's talk about startups then. I mean, what specifically do you look for in a startup?
It's a broad question. But in terms of what do I look for, it's usually the team and the problem they're solving. To take it on little bit deeper to that question, the team, people always say team. It's obviously, you want to know the softer skills, like, will they, how driven will they be? Will they continue to drive under pressure? Can they fundraise? Are they sales? Do they have the right background? And that's when it gets into a second category, which is, do they have the right background for the problem they're trying to solve? And so for me, those are the 2 important things I look for.
Excellent. You mentioned machine learning earlier. Just for those listeners who don't know what that is, what specifically is machine learning in simple terms?
Yeah, in simple terms, it's getting a series of data from a company and making sense of that data by predicting and creating patterns based on what you know. So predicting future in some ways based on the past patterns you already have. And that in more contextual way, it's used, for example, in your Google searches or things like that, right? When you search for a particular image, it knows based on context of people searching for similar images, what you might be looking for. So if you're looking for Apple, it shows you Apple phone if that's your background and search history and so forth, versus Apple the fruit. And so that's just a simple example of context, and there's many layers to it. But that's in essence an application of machine learning in an industry like visual search.
Excellent. Do you just invest in like US-based companies, or is it companies around the world, or is it Indian companies?
Usually just invest in US companies, but incorporated in the US, but then the companies tend to be based globally. So most of my companies are based in the US, but also in Israel and India.
Okay. And you must see a lot of pitches then. I mean, what specifically do you look for? You said team, but is there anything else that you specifically look for when it comes to pitching?
Yeah, last year I saw 2,300 companies. I see a lot of companies. And I made 6 investments last year. So that's the pace usually for most firms. Well, so what particularly I'm looking for? I mean, team is definitely one. What problem they're solving, their backgrounds, where they're coming from, and then the need is a real pain point. The industry, whatever they're trying to disrupt, in VC terms, people always refer to it as a vitamin versus an Advil. For the Indian market, and Advil might be like a kerosene. I don't know. So it's vitamin is more good to have. I'm not gonna be sick tomorrow if I don't take it. But if you're sick, Advil or a kerosene or whatever will really cure you. So it's a real pain point or not, And that's the big thing that I look for. So that's my whole thesis around investing is there was a whole flow of companies that went to the web. And now they're just beginning to get data. And so that data is now just beginning to create some sort of patterns and meaning. Most companies have accumulated enough data that you can do something to that. And that's why machine learning is now big and born today.
Are you based in Silicon Valley?
I'm based in San Francisco. So yeah, and not too far from Silicon Valley. So right here.
Excellent. So what is Silicon Valley really like then? Obviously, read the newspapers and watch TV. And from your perspective, what's it really like?
Silicon Valley. You watch the show?
Yeah, on HBO. Yeah.
It's exactly that. Actually,
okay.
It's unreal the amount of times people in my industry here kind of talk about the show and get like a heartburn just by like talking about it because it's pretty real. But despite all that, in terms of, like the energy is just different. Like you go to a cafe and everyone's talking about, the valuations or the next deal or their next secret idea or, founders go like, oh yeah, my company was born at this other coffee shop and this Samovar tea house is where we sat all day long building this. And so it's pretty vibrant in the tech scene. If you're not in the tech world, it might feel you might feel like out of place in some ways. It's like if you were in New York and not in banking, similar vibe. But yeah, that's what Silicon Valley is like. And it's pretty, it's nice, it's beautiful weather and lots of outdoor things to do. If that concerns this audience at all.
Who's the most interesting person you've met then?
In Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a tough question because the joke here is it's so hard and very unaffordable to live here that the uninteresting people leave.
Okay.
So, but I got to, through my profession, I get to meet a lot of awesome people. I meet founders of big VC firms. I've met Doug Leone from Sequoia or Bill Draper, the father of VC in some ways. And so, yeah, I think they're all interesting people. Like Bill Draper started investing in India, I don't even know, like 30, 40 years ago before it was a thing. Yeah, I meet a lot of amazing people. I pinch myself sometimes because this is my job to meet awesome people, smart, awesome people, and then to find ways to work with them.
So you say you see a lot of startups. How do you deal with like fear of missing out, FOMO?
You can't have that. It's you just have to prioritize what your goals are. Otherwise, you'd be at a networking event, frankly, every day, every second. Like just last night, I was at an event for a VC firm, and then someone was like, "Oh yeah," and there was an Andreessen event, and there was a Sedona event, and this event, and that event, and like, yeah, there is at a given point, you personally are invited to, 2, 3, 4, 5 events, and if it's popular times like holiday parties are coming up in December. The Oktoberfest parties were not too long ago, the beginning of the summer parties. It's like, that's when everyone throws parties. And you could just be like partying it up. And if you're homeless, I guess you could just crash these parties. But, all seriousness, I think you have to figure out what your agenda is. You could just keep meeting the same people every day at all these events and really not get any work done. So you have to figure out, in some ways that is work, right? They're parties, but that is work. It's work events. But even then you could just be like hopping from one event to the other at the Rosewood or at the, events somewhere in San Francisco, at the MoMA, whatever. So you have to really prioritize. I tend to just do topical events. So I personally run events and I do events like the CTO dinners or the CMO dinners or the AI machine learning dinner. And to me, bringing the right set of folks in one room to advance the thinking of the space, whichever what the space might be we're talking about, is more important to me than, just a broad-based outreach. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm an engineer, so to me, I've always built companies within companies. At IBM, I was part of the group that was run like research, and we worked on instant messaging, location-based services, voice over IP. This was the same group that hosted Olympics' first webpage in the 90s, and still host the US Open and things like that. So that group, we invented a lot of things, and if they were successful, they would end up being part of the bigger product groups at IBM. And that's where one of the products I was working on, instant messaging, became Lotus's chat client, which makes the company millions of dollars. So that's a pretty successful outcome, just in terms of an internal startup kind of a story. And then I ended up starting an internal incubator for IBM, where we ended up taking similar kind of people, like people who would be building things in their own time for fun, and if they got enough traction, would be part of other business groups like WebSphere, Lotus, Tivoli. So that gave me a good foundation of just building things from scratch and then commercializing them. I left that to start a company in the social big data world after my master's thesis in that space. And it was this is 2009-10 timeframe, when you leave, when I predicted that we're going to have a lot of friends on the social worlds, like LinkedIn, Facebook, so forth. And it will be very hard for us to keep in touch with what Dunbar number was popular for, which is 150 people. So it will be very hard to keep in touch with more than 150 people. So what do we need in order for us to help us make better, networking tools? So that was my company. And this is why, it was a big data problem, because you sift through all your unstructured data, like email, messaging, calls, LinkedIn, all the social networks, like LinkedIn and Facebook and so forth. So that was a company, and it was wrong timing, wrong market, many other wrong things that I could have done. As they say, there's only like one thing that needs to go right in a startup, and everything else is set against you, and you'll fail. That was a company that I started.
Excellent. So you've done a lot in your career. I mean, what's been the highlight so far?
I love what I do right now. Frankly, I get to work with the smartest people, and I get to learn how dumb I am in a way where I get to, in some ways, there is many things the founders come prepared with. Technically, especially, they're amazing. I mean, people who've built, products that you use every day on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and wherever. But then they're maybe not that savvy with customer development, maybe not that well versed with pricing. How do you price the product? So that's where I come in and help them think through the customer development piece, and then how do you price your product? How do you go to market without spending months and months and months on a customer, which can be an issue, right? In an enterprise sales cycle, like you could just keep waiting for like years before you can get a contract with anyone. So that's my value add, if I may, I did position it that way. It's where founders, like smart founders, technically smart founders, know what they're doing technically, but then making money requires a lot of, handheld, like support and network and so forth. So I usually let them build product and then, help them figure out how they're going to make money.
So are you having fun with this then? Is it fun? Because obviously most startups, do fail, even the funded ones. Or is it all business? The number here is like 1 out of 10 may succeed. Yeah, may succeed. And when I say 1 out of 10, I mean in a portfolio of a VC. So VC numbers, not like any startups.
Yeah, I'm having an amazing time. As I said, I have to pinch myself to see like this is my job to be working with some of the smartest people to solve some of the most technically challenging problems that if we do solve, to me, it's this is how I look at it. If we do solve these problems, is that the world I want to live in? And so that's what I fund. And so to me, yeah, I really want some of the biggest problems to be solved in better agriculture process, better water management, better trash resource management, things that are really going to uplift the standard of living for many, many people around the world if done right. And then once you do that, saving costs around that, efficiently using those capital and dollars spent to then freeing up their resources. Again, you can do all that by using machine learning analytics, and that's what I invest in. So once you do that, I would love to live in a clean, healthy, fresh water, water where I don't have to worry about what's in my water, kinds of things world. And then we're growing in population, and we hope everyone has the right food and fresh, healthy food to eat. So that's the kind of world like I like to live in, and that's the kind of investments I make, especially if they're tech enabled.
Excellent. What's like the best startup you've come across?
You can't ask someone to pick the best of their babies, but I do have companies that are in various verticals that help with fraud detection. So like how do you avoid credit card fraud or fraud with like online campaign, like a marketplace campaign or any of that stuff. It's companies like that. So that's a company called Simility, or a company that helps with visual search, and making sure that you don't waste too much time looking for like that beautiful red dress you're looking for. And that's a company called View AI. It's based in India actually, or a company that helps with your community management, and like so the enterprise version of like Google Groups. So every baby of mine, like company that helps with events. So I invest in a variety of sectors, and I like them all. Otherwise, I wouldn't have invested in them.
So, what about like gut instinct then, or does that still play a part in whether you invest in a company?
Yeah, it does. That's the common. So there's people talk about many words here in terms of investing. It's science and pattern recognition and gut and So and then there's like a new wave of investors trying to bring data into the picture. But then there's still people who go like, gut is important, right? Like if you feel, you talk to investors often and they go like a couple years after in making an investment, they go, I knew this, right? Like you just wanted to rationalize a decision with whatever else. And it's the hard part because there have been many, so the thing is like you can come across many companies, and that's what people here call sourcing. So sourcing is one aspect of investing, but then picking is more important too. Like the number of times people in early days passed on Airbnb or Uber, there are a lot of people who saw those companies, but how many people actually picked those companies in their portfolio? So gut instinct plays. There are people who invested because they knew the guy, they knew Travis or whatever from the previous company, and then there's some people who couldn't get comfortable with it. So there is a big element of gut, but there's also like the data-driven approach to like at least have few things, like basic things in your house in order. Gut comes around like, I don't know why, but the numbers tell me the numbers that there right now, and the entrepreneurs putting out there, the company's growing at like 20%, but I think it's going to be growing at 40%. But there's no enough data right now that you can use to prove that. And then markets change, world changes, and that can happen 2-3 years down the road. Or something about the founder, right? Like there's things like, I don't know why, I just love the founder's hustle, or how genuine they are, or how they are, going to work hard to make sure that the company succeeds and they do good by everyone. Those are the kinds of things that the gut really helps you see and think through. But you still have to do the other basic diligence and things that you do, which you can't ignore.
Last two questions. What's the one thing you want people to know about building a startup?
Yeah. One thing is, nothing you ever planned for it to go a certain way will go that way. And you need perseverance. And there's like all these fancy words for what people call now like pivots and so forth. In simple words, pivots happen just because things didn't work out, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to do something to return that capital. And, if you see something that you don't think is a big market or is not going to return that capital sooner, then you pivot to kind of work hard to make that company work some other way. And this can happen many times from day one of you thinking about investing, to actually even breaking through and making a name. Forget success. It's even just kind of like seeing some traction. That time frame can be long. And then once you have that kind of product market fit and indications of success, now convincing 10 customers, 100 customers, getting from like $10 in revenue to $1 million to $100 million, all is really hard. And in the meantime, things can happen, things can happen at home, your best employees can leave, and so many things can happen. And so perseverance is very important for a founder to really make something work. Not every story is like the best startup story where everything like you IPO in 5 years like Square or something. So that's something I would say, like you have to go with eyes wide open, knowing that's your journey, and just hustle through.
And what would first-time founders be focusing on? I
mean, it's hard to say if it's a consumer or an enterprise company, but on the enterprise side, just focus on customers and revenue. End of the day, if you are getting enough people wanting your product, then everything else doesn't matter. Obviously, when I say everything else, I mean like then has to be around like how fast are you growing, and then how much do you want to raise, and all those other things, kind of metrics and all those things that people talk about is a different story. But everything else, when I say, is go with your gut at that point and continue to deliver. And if you're getting money in the bank from the customers, that's the most important metric to go by and build your product for.
Excellent. Last question. If people want more information on you and Array.vc, what must they do?
They can follow me on Twitter it's at Twitter, it's at Shruti. So it's ATSHRUTI. And then I'm usually pretty active there and very responsive there.
Brilliant. Thanks for coming on the show today, Shruti.
Thanks so much, Neil. Really appreciate it.
Have a great weekend and good luck.
You too. Thanks.
Excellent. Bye. Cheers, mate. Thank you. Bye. Thanks to Shruti for coming on the show today. For more information, go to www.array.vc. Thanks for listening and subscribing. Thanks for supporting the podcast, and I shall be back next week. If you have any feedback on the show or want to come on the show, please send me an email, hello@neilpatel.co, or tweet at Indian Startup SH, or you can go to facebook.com/Indian Startup Show. We'd love to connect. Thank you and goodbye.